Effortless Mindfulness with Loch Kelly. Experience support for awakening as the next stage of human development through micro-meditations and conversations about non-duality, neuroscience, and contemporary psychology. Welcome to the Effortless Mindfulness podcast. Today I'm just going to give you a little bit of my journey and how I came to find effortless mindfulness and what it has done for me, and hopefully give you a sense of what it is and what it's like and why it's so important. It really did change my entire life, and growing up, I wasn't a meditative kid at all. I struggled with forms of dyslexia and ADHD. And, if I look back and really feel into it, though I tried my best to do the best I could, I had a feeling that something wasn't quite right, that something was missing or out of balance or something was wrong with me. And I think this is pretty common, certainly in our adolescent days, particularly. But now I understand that this is both developmentally makes sense, that we are trying to become independent and are looking for ways to be okay. And when we're younger, we feel like if something's wrong, it must be our fault. And then the other reason is because there does seem to be this kind of underlying or existential feeling that in Buddhism is called dukkha, which is translated into suffering, but is also often translated as a sense of perpetual dissatisfaction. So I imagine some of you may have that sense, even if you look now, let alone in your own growing up. So this kind of, whether it's pervasive or turns into anxiety or depression, or it's even like a background feeling like something's not right, or even when I do find satisfaction in things in the world, some happiness, some joy, some connections, through outer events, successes, relationships, that still a moment after, a day after, it's just not enough. Something's not quite right. And this sense is the suffering that then can self-reference itself and almost create more problems. It either drives us out to try to solve it through outward pleasure or even addiction, or trying to be somebody in our community, or to measure ourselves by whatever the social sense of being okay or being worthy or worthwhile is. So this is pretty common for all of us, and I became increasingly curious about what is it that could relieve this suffering. And I certainly tried all the usual ways of finding relief and pleasure, and from reading and romantic relationships, going into nature, travel, and, as many of us may have tried, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as I sought some kind of relief, and from satisfying and finding satisfaction that is in the moment. That's a physical satisfaction, that's a mental satisfaction, that's emotional satisfaction. But what we're focused on here is not only growing up, but waking up, and waking up from that perpetual dissatisfaction. So as I went along, I found that one of the things I did was to find a way to change my consciousness. That's what I realized early on. One of the things that gave me joy was playing sports. And one story is that I was younger and was listening to a TV show where the sports commentator said, he's got eyes in the back of his head, about a quarterback playing football. And I immediately thought, oh, I know what that is. That's something important. That's not literally knowing what's behind you or having kind of a sense of your environment, but it literally is a way that I knew I had experienced what's called being in the zone or being in a flow state during sport, and that I could concentrate from this even better. So the story is that I started to practice this intentionally. And in fact, it's one of the basis for one of the meditations, one of the glimpse practices I do now, which is called returning the eyes to their natural state or panoramic awareness. So what I started to do is play with this and started to open my peripheral vision. And then I must have shifted into a kind of awareness-based knowing, which I call it now. I didn't know what it was then. And then I continued to open up that feeling of awareness that was not only in front of me, but the sides of me and where my ears were, where sound came and went to the side, and then even behind me. So I felt this sense of what I now call awareness has my back, or a sense that I've opened my view to this 360-degree panoramic feeling, and then resting as that open, clear readiness. I felt like that awareness that was open-minded and panoramic could then drop within my body. So I dropped out of that small pinpointing sense of trying to use attention and into this holistic, embodied, open-minded and open-hearted connection that would happen naturally in the midst of doing a task or a sport that would lead me into the zone. But the unique thing here is that I found a way to do it deliberately, to do it immediately, to do it intentionally. But the intentionality of it, as soon as I shifted out of that small sense of self, the intentionality was taken up by the awareness-based knowing, the awake consciousness, as I would call it now. But I would drop into my body, and one game I was playing ice hockey goalie. I was very young, 14, and I had just played a game, and one of my best friends came in and said, "Man, that was great. You played so well. How'd you do that?" And I kind of stopped for a moment and went, "Am I really going to say this?" I said, "You really want to know?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so I said, well, I open my awareness around my whole body. I drop in to the sense of being interconnected with everything. And then time slows down. I don't feel like I have to try. I just open to be responsive. And then somebody takes a shot, hits the puck from the blue line. I see it as it starts. Then I lose it in the legs of people. And then my hand shoots out and the puck ends up in my glove. And he went, "Oh, cool," and just walked away. And so I thought, okay, well, gave that a try. Not sure everyone's ready for that. So interestingly, what happened was one of the seniors on the team heard what I was saying. And the next practice, he came in and he threw this little thin book at me and said, "Here, kid, read this. It's what you were talking about." And what it was Zen and the Art of Archery. So that was really my first book that I found this sense that, wow, people value this. They know this. This is available. You can practice it through sport. But then it's this other thing, Zen, that's not just about sport, that's about you can practice it in the rest of your life. And I was like, whoa. Cool. Then I was in the sense as a teenager of like, all right, this is great. I had a funny thought, later on. I think I was riding a bus to school and just thought, this must be what adults talk about, these kind of secret things when they're all together. And much later realized, no, they don't talk about this. But that sense that it was so valuable, this must be what everyone is really longing to find because it gives such pleasure, such embodiment, such freedom from the small mind, such a sense of being able to be clear and alive and awake. So this kind of led me to study in college, even and go to a Zen retreat. But what happened next was that as I practiced this and then tried to bring it into my life, it wasn't always so successful. And I was doing a lot of other normal college stuff. But then the next big event in my life happened, which was my father developed brain cancer right before my freshman year. He was diagnosed. He had a brain tumor the size of a lemon in the left hemisphere of his brain. And he had an operation in New York, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and they did as good a job as they could. He started to recover. So by holidays that year, I came home and he was starting to get back. He was reading again and actually brought me one of his workbooks to show me how well he was doing. So it was a really powerful change in that I was really the boy who was just becoming a man, and now my father had become younger and was acting like the boy coming to me. So that was very powerful. And somehow that left lobe of the brain, which is interesting, is that he became more joyful and more open. So my girlfriend came to the door once to visit me, and he just threw his arms around her and gave her this big hug and said, "Oh, it's so good to see you." And that just wasn't normally what he would do. He was more reserved and laid back and more formal. So it was kind of interesting to see the effect of this. But what happened later that year is he developed a brain aneurysm, and they tried another operation. And unfortunately, by the end of that year, he passed away in that summer, a year later. So I was there at college and had this, sense of grief. He had passed away. We had the funeral service. I went up to college that next week and didn't have many friends to talk about. Most of my friends had not had that kind of loss at this age, and tried to go to the counseling center and found kind of a Freudian style counselor who just took notes and didn't seem to help. So after a few sessions, I left. And so there I was late that fall as it was getting colder. And I remember this crisp, clear night that I was coming out of the library up on this hill and walked out, and I heard what felt like a voice within me, but it felt like it was above me. So now I understand it to be, kind of a part of me, but it said, or I said, "I don't know if you can take this much longer." And what happened was that I looked with my awareness as if there was a voice right above me. Awareness kind of opened up out of my head. And then as I did, the awareness opened, my eyes opened, and I felt this expansiveness, this opening, and it went all the way up to the sky. It was a beautiful early winter, clear night sky. And I felt that this weight of grief, this kind of holding in all of this struggle and, trying to get through and not having anyone to talk to and feeling this deep loss, all of a sudden lifted. Or it didn't lift, it just that there was more room. There was more space, there was more capacity, there was more of a dimension of support that felt like something greater than myself, but essentially who I was. I didn't interpret it as something religious or bigger than, my own consciousness, but definitely not my personal consciousness, and felt the sense of relief and then support and capacity. So I started crying and then laughing and kind of feeling this sense that there was something else that was similar to that being in the zone feeling of sports, but this was now about my emotional life. And so I found this sense of what now is similar to the kind of process of effortless mindfulness, of unhooking from this small sense of self and either dropping into the subtlest dimension within or opening out through the senses to this spacious, awake awareness, this feeling of a sense of open mind, open heart, and then feeling back from this something greater than myself, this true nature or self essence, back to curiously see how I feel toward parts of me that are suffering or feel anxious or worried or sad or shame. And then feeling there is this love, this unconditional, loving, felt sense of comfort and healing and letting go of this sense of dissatisfaction, perpetual dissatisfaction, that there's something even in the midst of the pain, not that it even goes away or there isn't life of ups and downs, but that there's a dimension that's accessed that is the most subtle, widest, highest, deepest, and yet ordinary feeling of well-being and okayness, kind of a ground that's made of awareness and then energy and love that is the foundation of who I am rather than the thinker or the worrier or the one who needs to figure it out or try harder or be good enough or be strong. This is already this kind of strength that is remarkably available. And so in some ways, this sense of orientation, what's called orientation instruction, which is more of a sense of opening or moving awareness out of its collapsed or small contraction that's self-referencing into this subtler, wider orientation and this new view, which then is able to be accessed immediately because it's already here. It's not something that we need to develop or create or cultivate as you do with some other skills, but this feeling of essential well-being that heals that feeling of unworthiness or not being loved by being there with those parts of us that feel unloved and have been repressed or moved into the shadow or exiled, are now able to detox and be heard and met and loved back to this fullness of my whole human life. So in some ways it's not just a state of calm that effortless mindfulness brings, not just a relief of the symptom of anxiety or depression or fear or stress, which the initial mindfulness practices do, but it goes to the root of the existential anxiety, the root of suffering from being a small, thought-based body-mind only and finding this other dimension that doesn't require some kind of bigger religious beliefs. It's really this feeling that many spiritualities, religion, and contemplative practitioners have described all along as being interconnection, connection with something greater than ourselves, relaxing of fear and worry and shame into that which doesn't come and go, that's able to feel like it's with what comes and goes in a way that is quite remarkable. And the word for meditation in Tibetan language is gom, and it's translated as familiarize. So in some ways we recognize and realize this dimension with effortless mindfulness, a shift of our mind from thought-based mind to awareness-based mind, open mind, new sense of awareness from small, pinpointed attention to this panoramic, embodied awareness that is interconnected with what it's aware of, and then a shift of identity, the ground of identity being a sense of okayness and well-being. So I hope you will join me in this continual exploration of this consciousness and discover this kind of direct approach, this innate, non-dual, awake, loving nature that we are seeking, discovering that it's already here within us and can be accessed immediately, and then through small glimpses many times, it starts to become the new normal and allow our mind and body to wake up and grow up. And now here's a mindful glimpse so you can experience returning your eyes to their natural condition and opening to this panoramic awareness as the new view and the new you. Many meditation practices begin with eyes closed or eyes half closed, but in order to live an awake life, we have to be able to make a transition from sitting or having our eyes closed to living an awake life with eyes open. So let's do a series of glimpses which help return our eyes to their natural condition. So begin by finding a comfortable way of sitting and allow your eyes to be open. Settle in and feel the sense of gravity as your body rests in a chair or cushion. And begin to hear the sounds in the room or from this audio. And notice that sounds come from outside to your eardrums. So feel hearing as receiving. Just check for yourself for a moment and notice sound waves traveling from outside to your eardrums and experience hearing as receiving. And now notice how seeing tends to be experienced. You can look out at an object in the room and now switch and look at another object in the room. And this time, as you switch to look at something else, notice how seeing or looking is almost like your hand going out to touch or grab the object. So it goes out from your head or your eyes to this next object as you shift to look at something new. And feel this, I am aware of seeing that object. So you feel that kind of going out, that grasping, the attempt to be quick, as if you're trying to get something or be safe by noticing something and focusing in on it. But interestingly, the eyes work biologically the same way the ears do. Light reflects off of objects and comes to our eyes. So seeing is also receiving, same as hearing. So notice what this is like, this first pointer, to just feel whether you can experience seeing as receiving. Just rest back, relax your gaze, and receive light. And let that part of your brain that is trying to be safe by going quickly outward, let it know that light is traveling at the speed of light. So you're safe by receiving. And now, as you rest, notice that even as you attend to something, your attention can focus there and let it focus on an object. But as your attention rests, as your attention goes out to focus on an object, just let your awareness be different than your attention. So let your awareness unhook from that object and become interested in the space between you and the object, feeling that awareness knows the space directly. And then feel as if this awareness can move itself and rest back to be aware of the space between your eyes and the space above your neck, the space between your ears, and then let awareness somehow rest back behind you and feel the awareness that has your back. And just notice as this awareness rests back, whether it can feel the awareness that's already aware by itself without your help. So this spacious awareness is discovered to be aware within you, forward and all around, while you rest back. And let go into this field of awareness that's effortlessly mindful. Like awareness mingles with space, like air into air. There's a field of awareness that arises like an ocean of awareness from behind you, naturally arising as your body flowing, sensations, feeling of space, energy, and form, and naturally interconnected with whatever you're looking at without creating a subject or an object. And as you rest in this field of awareness, just begin to open your awareness to each side in front of you. So as your awareness begins to open left and right in front of you, let your eyes follow. So your peripheral vision begins to open. And breathe in cool air. Let a smile come to your face as this awareness begins to open to each side of your body, gently without straining. And as awareness begins to open and become aware at the side of your body, you can let it unhook from seeing. Let your eyes remain open as the awareness is aware of the space on the side in which sound is coming and going, and then continues somehow around behind you, moving itself 360 degrees to be aware of this open view, this open field of awareness. From this panoramic open view, feel this field of awareness and curiously let your awareness look. Are you aware of the spacious awareness? Or what's it like when you are resting as the spacious awareness that's aware of itself, by itself, as itself, effortlessly? And just letting go and letting be. Are you aware as this awareness, or what's it like when you're aware from this awareness that's equally spacious and also pervasive. An awareness that's arising like an ocean of awareness, dancing as dynamic energy that's not separate from the awareness, like dancing awareness that's equally inside and out. So feel that from this view of spacious and pervasive awareness, that there's a seamless evenness that can be aware of your left hand and your right hand at the same time, aware of what's behind you, within you, and in front of you, equally, all at onceness. And with your eyes open, notice that all your senses are equally open and aware from this alert, non-thought based clarity. And you can be aware of thoughts coming and going without needing to orient to thought or create a small observer in the middle of your head. Feel this open view, panoramic, embodied flow that can remain undistracted without effort. Just naturally including everything. Notice this effortless mindfulness from this new level of mind. Alert without orienting to thought. Resting as this awareness without going to sleep. And here, interconnected without going to daydream, allowing yourself to feel the interconnectedness and a subtle okayness, well-being, or bliss that is this dancing awareness that's equally all around and within. Feel more dropped from head to heart space, just noticing that you don't have to create a small self or manager within your body to be alert or safe. That your ears can receive, your eyes can receive. And then just without going to your mind or creating a doer, see if you can just allow this from this panoramic flow, from this inner knowing to begin to allow your body to naturally stretch in the way that it likes, slowly and easily without thinking about what you're doing or creating a self-conscious checking. And if you do, just notice that part that arises, welcome it as part of you, and just curiously inquiring with awareness, where am I aware from? Is this a meditation state? Or could this be my natural condition to which other states are welcome to come and go? A new normal, to see if you can move and relate and create from here. And when you lose it, no big surprise. Just learn to re-recognize. Once you have familiarized, see if it's your heart's desire to live from here. Small glimpses, abiding and expressing, losing it, getting covered over, and returning home to this panoramic flow consciousness that is your natural condition, with eyes open. Enjoy. We offer this podcast freely thanks to the donations of kind listeners like you. If you'd like to be a supporter of this podcast, please visit lochkelly.org/donate. We are grateful for your tax-deductible donation.